Greetings, class. This is rsargen, and this is my presentation on operating systems and firewalls hardening recommendations. Let's begin with operating systems. Operating systems is software that supports a computer's basic functions such as scheduling tasks, executing applications, and control peripherals. Most operating systems consist of the user mode and the kernel mode. The user mode is what we tend to interact with on a normal basis, and the kernel mode is a compute in the background. Popular types of OSs are Windows, Linux variations such as Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, Mac OS, the ever popular mobile OSs such as Android and Apple iOS. Next, we go over the hardening recommendations and procedures for Windows. I broke the hardening recommendations into three separate areas or categories. The first one is operational, which is kind of like the action, technical, which is the system configurations, and management, which is risk. In the operational, keeping your device secure is the first step. Example is not leaving your laptop laying out or left in your vehicle to be stolen. Locking your device when not in use, such as Control-Alt-Delete, and requiring unlocking passwords. Additionally, individual user accounts if a shared device are recommended. From a technical point of view, ensuring that you're using private IP addresses and your NATing so that your hosts and devices aren't on public networks. You're using public IPs. Then we have ports, disabling known ports such as FTP, Telnet, and RDP. Disabling unused services such as Bluetooth, FTP services, remote desktop, RPC, and a host of others. Then there's the local firewalls. Ensuring that you have Windows Firewall turned on, that inbound connections are set to block, outbound connections set to allow, and you have logging. Lastly, from a technical perspective, using virus protection. You can use the local Windows security virus and threat protection, ensuring that this is set to on, or use a third party such as McAfee, Norton, AVG, or Kaspersky. From a management point of view, password policies such as enforcing password history, max password age, min password length of 14 characters. Next, the account lockout policy. Lockout is set to 15 minutes or more. Lockout thresholds and attempts. Then there's always the safe online browsing and habits. Not going to risk sites, not downloading unknown software. Lastly, keeping the OS updated and patched is very important as well. Proceed on to the hardening recommendations for the Linux Ubuntu. Just like the Windows, operationally, you want to keep your device secure. You want to lock the system when not in use. And you want to have individual user accounts if there's a shared device. From a technical point of view, you want to use NATing using an internal IP address. You want to ensure the root login is restricted to system console and access to SU command is restricted. Once again, you want to disable ports such as FTP and Telnet. There's some file configurations that should be disabled as too. You're ensuring that you're disable unused file systems. You're using separate partitions. Additionally, ensuring code dumps are restricted. Then there's services, once again, disabling system services. To name a few, there's daytime discard echo, Telnet server, TFTP server, local firewalls. With Ubuntu, they uses IP tables, so ensuring that IP tables is installed, that default deny firewall policy, loopback traffic is configured, and that outbound established connections is configured to ensure firewall rules exist for open ports. Virus protection is also available from third parties, such as Bitdefender, Clam, AV, and Sophos. From the management category, make sure that logging is active. with system accounting, password policy, set shadow password suite parameters with the password expiration, minimum days between password, and the lockout. With reducing your risk surface, you wanted to have great online habits and keep the OS up to date. In summary, physical security is important. Log on to password restrictions and policies help harden authentication and access. Disable the vulnerable ports and services. Use host firewalls and virus protection. And reduce your risk surface by practicing safe surfing habits. I expanded on this presentation to include firewalls, not only on the host level, but on a appliance or standalone level. So what are firewalls? Firewalls are anything hardware, software, combination of the two that can filter transmission of packets, digital information as they attempt to pass through an interface between networks. Firewalls perform two basic security functions: packet filtering and application proxy. The hardening recommendations and procedures for firewalls are once again categorized into three areas: operational, technical, and management. Operationally, keep your device in a secure location, such as a locked server room or data center. Remove default passwords. Limit access and permission to firewalls. Require two-factor authentication. Technical. Configure the login banner. Configure the manage interfaces to restrict how they are used and accessed and secured. Have a minimum password requirements and authentication settings, lengths, combination, timeouts, and failed attempts. Also, it's a good idea to change the default passwords. Keep the OS version up to date and use the deny any ACL. On this slide, we continue with the technical area where we see the recommended service and port blocking. I'm not going to read these off, but as you can see, there's quite a number recommended ports or services to be turned off. I got these ports from the SANS Firewall Checklist PDF. From the management perspective, secure architecture and placement of firewalls, like in a DMZ, firewall policy, change management to ensure changes being made are secure and follow policy, version release policy and control, and finally logging and auditing. In summary, we begin with physical security, then authentication and access with login and password restrictions and policy. We then move to the technical, where we're disabling vulnerable ports and services, keeping the OS up to date, and reduce the risk surface with architecture and policy. The last slide is my references. And this concludes my presentation on hardening OS and firewalls.